Ella Lane Earhart had built her life on structure. Precise, immaculate structure. Meetings lined up to the minute. Contracts reviewed 3 times. Proposals returned with red notations, so sharp they looked like battle wounds. And her home? It followed the same rules. There were schedules, protocols, alarms, and now, cameras. 16 cameras. Each one installed deliberately the night before her new caregiver started. Not hidden, but not obvious either. Disguised as smoke detectors, air freshen dispensers, decorative corners high on walls. Eleanor told herself it wasn't paranoia but necessity. After all, everyone she had trusted, everyone, had eventually betrayed her. Her son's last nanny lasted 4 days. The one before that, 3. Lucas was 6 years old, brilliant, stubborn, quiet one moment and explosive the next. Therapists called it emotional dysregulation. Teachers said he struggled with transitions. Consultants used words like sensory overwhelm. But none of them had to live with the aftermath. The screaming, the broken things, the closed-door meetings where adults whispered about him as if he wasn't in the next room listening. And now a stranger, a single dad with a stranger Zoom and an even stranger stillness, was in her house, alone with her son. Eleanor sat in her glass-walled office on the 42nd floor. The city stretched beneath her like a map of glowing arteries. She should have been reviewing quarterly projections. That was the plan. But instead, her laptop screen displayed her living room in high resolution. White walls covered in new smears of blue crayon. Shattered ceramic across the floor. The vase her late husband bought her in Florence on their last anniversary together. Lucas stood in the middle of the mess, face flushed, fists trembling. He had been mid-tantrum when she opened the app. No surprise there. What startled her was the man sitting with him, Jack Morgan, not looming over Lucas, not lecturing him, not towering with crossed arms the way the previous caregivers did. He was sitting cross-legged on the hardwood floor, eye level with a furious 6-year-old. Eleanor leaned closer, fingertips hovering over the keyboard. If Jack raised his voice, if he grabbed Lucas' arm, if he showed the slightest hint of aggression, she would end the contract in 3 sentences. Quick, clean, no hesitation. But Jack's voice came through the speakers low, steady, maddeningly gentle. Hey, what are you angry about? Lucas kicked a toy truck. It skidded across the floor, hitting the baseboard with a hollow crack. Jack didn't react, didn't flinch, didn't even blink. Is it because your mom went to work today? He asked. Lucas stopped. His breathing hitched. He stared at Jack like the man had spoken a secret coded language only Lucas understood. Eleanor's hand slipped from her phone. Her stomach tightened. Jack reached for something, a small wet cloth he'd pulled from his pocket, and held it out. Let me help you clean your hands, he murmured. Then you can tell me about it. Lucas looked at his palms, smeared in crayon wax in frustration. Then, astonishingly, he took the cloth. He didn't speak, but he didn't run, and he didn't scream. Jack waited, not impatiently, not nervously, just waited, like time didn't matter. Eleanor swallowed hard. What was this man doing to her child? She had seen hundreds of resumes in her life, sleek, polished, full of self-praise. Jack's had been the opposite. Simple, sparse, almost hauntingly honest. 3 years as a preschool teacher, a 2-year unexplained gap, then a patchwork of part-time jobs. Grocery clerk, janitor, rideshare driver. His application letter, 1 paragraph long. No flattery, no embellishment. He said he loved working with children and needed steady income. Eleanor nearly deleted it, but something about its simplicity had felt true. During the interview that morning, he'd arrived early. His shirt was neatly ironed but slightly oversized, hanging on him like he had recently lost weight. His handshake was brief, his voice quiet, his eyes reluctant but steady. When she asked why he left teaching, he answered plainly, "My wife passed away 2 years ago. I needed flexible work, so I could care for my daughter." She remembered the way his eyes dropped when he spoke, like grief had become a permanent weight in his chest. "And where's your daughter now?" she'd asked. "With my dad. I'm still trying to get back on my feet." He said it without breaking, but the pain sat in the spaces between his words. Eleanor understood grief that seeped into the bones. Her husband had been gone for 2 years, yet every corner of the mansion still echoed with the absence. She hired Jack not because she trusted him. Eleanor Hart trusted no one, but because he needed stability enough not to quit. And she needed someone to stay longer than 5 days. But she also installed cameras, because desperation made people dangerous. And she had been burned enough times to build walls made of steel and surveillance. Now, watching him through the camera, she couldn't decide if she should fire him or freeze the screen and study it forever. Lucas sat beside Jack, not close enough to touch, but closer than he ever allowed anyone. Jack reached for a book from the shelf, a fantasy story with dragons. He opened it and began reading aloud in that calm, plain voice of his. No dramatic flair, no silly voices, just quiet storytelling. Lucas leaned in, actually leaned in. Eleanor choked on her own breath. Lucas hadn't sat through a story in months. The last nanny tried, and Lucas had thrown the book at her. The one before that had given up when Lucas ripped the pages out. But now, he was listening, pulled knees to chest, eyes focused, breathing slow. Then the impossible happened. Lucas' small head inched sideways, closer, closer, until it rested gently against Jack's shoulder. Jack didn't react, didn't shift, didn't ruin a moment with a dramatic gesture. He simply kept reading. Eleanor touched her lips with her fingertips. Lucas hadn't leaned on anyone, since the day her husband died. Not even her. And now he had rested on a stranger's shoulder after 2 hours. Her stomach twisted painfully. What am I missing? What aren't you showing? She stared until her eyes burned, until the office lights dimmed automatically at dusk, until a CFO texted her asking about the board meeting tomorrow. She barely typed back. When she looked again, it was already past 7. Jack was cleaning the living room while Lucas quietly ate a sandwich at the table. Jack wiped blue crayon from the walls. He swept the ceramic shards. He moved with slow, deliberate care. He didn't check the time. He didn't hurry. Eleanor closed the laptop. She had intended to fire him tonight. Now she needed him to return tomorrow, if only so she could watch more. Watch what he does. Watch who he is. Watch what her son becomes when she's not in the room. By the end of the week, she had watched a staggering 72 hours of footage. She saw things she had not seen in over a year. Lucas laughing. Lucas helping. Lucas listening. Lucas learning to crack eggs without spilling shells everywhere. She saw Jack kneel beside him in the garden, showing him how to pull weeds gently. She saw Lucas trying again and again, waiting for Jack's nod of approval. She saw Lucas ask questions. She saw patience, endless patience, from a man who probably got 4 hours of sleep a night and still smiled at her son like he was the most important child in the world. But Eleanor also saw something else. Her own obsessive checks. Her inability to stop watching. At first every 2 hours. Then every hour. Then every 30 minutes. Then one night, at 2 a.m, staring at an empty hallway feed as if it could reveal the truth about Jack's intentions. The problem wasn't the cameras. The problem was her. Maybe she didn't trust Jack. Maybe she didn't trust anyone. Maybe she didn't trust herself. On Tuesday of the second week, she opened the camera feed and froze. Jack had Lucas in the backyard with dirt on his hands, planting seeds. Dandelions? Tomatoes? She couldn't tell. The routine said breakfast at 7, educational videos until 8, structured play after. Not gardening, not mud, not spontaneous anything. Her jaw tightened. She started typing a text reminding Jack of the schedule, then stopped. Lucas was smiling, a real smile, dirt smeared on his cheek, hair sticking up, eyes bright like sunlight breaking after months of rain. Eleanor closed a message. Her hand trembled. She put the phone face down on her desk and took a slow breath. Maybe the schedule could bend. Just once. The little girl's tiny hand clutched Orion Hale's coat sleeve as they stepped out of the alley and into the biting wind again. Snow had worsened, falling fast and angry, covering everything in white. Cars crawled through the slush. The city seemed to hold its breath, waiting, watching. Orion picked up his pace. "Sweetheart," he said gently, "we're going straight to the hospital, the one close to your home. It's the fastest way to check if your mom has been found." Ilera nodded, though her lower lip trembled. "Okay, but Mom never goes to hospitals. She hates them." "She'll go if she's hurt," he said, squeezing her hand. She didn't answer. She just kept walking, tiny boots crunching beside his long stride. Ambulance at the hospital. The emergency department buzzed with exhaustion. Nurses rushing, families crying, the stench of antiseptic heavy in the air. Orion stepped to front desk. "Orion Hale," he said, "I'm looking for a missing woman. The mother of this child." He lowered his voice. She may have been brought in due to exposure or injury. The nurse looked up, startled at first, recognizing him. Most people did, but he didn't care about that now. "What's her name?" she asked. Ilera whispered it. Her voice was barely sound. The nurse checked the system, her polite professionalism slowly shifting into something else, something heavier. Her eyes softened. "Sir, a woman by that name was brought in early this morning." She hesitated. She was unconscious when she arrived. Ilera's breath caught. Is she? "She's alive," the nurse said quickly, "but she's in critical care." Ilera sagged in relief, covering her face with her hands. Orion closed his eyes briefly, letting his racing pulse settle. "Can we see her?" he asked. "You can, but only one visitor at a time." Orion gently pushed Ilera forward. "You first." Bed, the ICU room. Machines beeped steadily. The room felt cold, sterile, and too still. Ilera climbed onto the chair beside her mother's bed. The woman was pale, lips blue tinged, cuts on her forehead, a bandage around her wrist. Snow had damaged her skin. She looked like someone who had fought the whole night to survive. "Mama," Ilera whispered, touching her mother's hand. The woman didn't move, but tears slipped from the corners of Ilera's eyes. Orion stood by the window, jaw clenched. He hated seeing children in pain. He hated helplessness. He called the doctor outside the room. "Tell me everything," he said. And the doctor did. She had been found collapsed in a loading bay behind a closed store. Signs of struggle. Exposure to freezing temperatures. Bruises. Defensive wounds. Someone had hurt her. Someone had left her there. Someone had hoped she wouldn't make it until morning. Orion's expression darkened. Not anger. Something colder. A decision. Detective, the truth emerges. By the time Ilera fell asleep beside her mother's bed, Orion had made 4 calls. 1 to his head of security. 1 to the police commissioner. 1 to his lawyer. 1 to a man he rarely called. Because when he did, things changed. His team arrived at the hospital within the hour. "Find out who did this," he told them. "And don't stop until I have names." They nodded. No hesitation. He wasn't just a CEO. He was someone with reach. Someone people listened to. By midday, he had security footage, eyewitness reports, and a location pin where the woman had last been seen before she vanished. A man in a dark jacket. A familiar face. A debt collector from her past. Orion's jaw flexed. He knew his next step. House with garden and new promise. Hours passed. The woman's condition stabilized slowly. Not healed, but no longer fading. Ilera finally slept deeply on the couch in the ICU room, small hands curled against her chest. Orion watched her for a long moment. This child had walked through the snow alone, faced rejection, cried without anyone seeing. And still, she had kept going. He sat quietly beside her, because she shouldn't sit in a hospital alone. Not anymore. When the doctor came in later, Orion asked, "How long will her recovery take?" "A few weeks of close monitoring. And afterward, she'll need help. Physical therapy. Someone to watch over her." "I'll take care of it," he said. It wasn't a question. The doctor blinked. "You, sir?" "I said I'll take care of it." Cloud with snow when the mother finally woke. It was nearly midnight when the woman stirred. Her lashes fluttered. Her breathing hitched. And then her eyes opened. "Mama!" Ilera bolted upright. Her mother blinked, confused, weak. "Ilera?" How? Ilara threw her arms around her gently. I was scared. I was so scared. The woman stroked her daughter's hair. I'm okay, baby. I'm here. Orion stepped forward. You're safe now, he said softly. And you're not going back to that life. She looked up at him, startled to see a billionaire standing at her bedside. Why did you help us? He glanced at Ilara. Because someone had to. But he didn't say that. Instead, you raised a brave little girl. That's worth everything. How's a new beginning? By morning, Orion had arranged. Heavy checkmark a private recovery suite, heavy checkmark a legal team. To handle her case, heavy checkmark security for her, and Ilara heavy checkmark a full-time protection detail. Heavy checkmark a new home. Safe, warm, and far from a man who hurt her. When she tried to protest, I can't afford this. He shook his head. You don't need to afford it. You just need to heal. Ilara beamed at him, eyes shining with trust, so pure it made his chest tighten. Sir, are you to come visit us? Orion smiled. Something rare, something real. I'm not going anywhere. Outside, snow began to fall again, but softer this time, gentler, like the world was finally offering mercy instead of warning. And for the first time in a long time, they were no longer walking through alone.